Evelyn perched on the edge of her chair, her heart pounding as she waited for her name to be called. The room seemed to hold its breath, but then, breaking the silence, her childhood boyfriend's voice rang out, announcing not her name, but her sister's. The summer of 2005 painted Maple Grove with golden sunlight and whispered promises of forever. In this small town where prejudices ran as deep as the oak roots in front yards, 11-year-old Evelyn Gibson stood out like a wildflower in a perfectly manicured garden. Her deep brown eyes held wisdom beyond her years, and her infectious laugh could make even the sternest neighbors crack a smile. But it was her heart, pure and trusting, that would one day lead to both her greatest joy and deepest pain. Patrick Lee moved into the house across the street that June, his family's moving truck stirring up dust that danced in the afternoon light. While other neighbors peered through curtains and whispered about the White family moving into their diverse neighborhood, Evelyn sat on her front porch, legs swinging from the swing, watching as a boy her age struggled with a box marked "Books" in crooked Sharpie letters. Their eyes met across the sun-drenched street, and without hesitation, Evelyn hopped off her swing. "Want some help?" she called out, already jogging over. Patrick's relief was evident in his smile, a gentle upturn of lips that would become familiar to her over the years. "I'm Patrick," he said, shifting the box to extend his hand. "Evelyn," she replied, grabbing the other end of the box instead. That box of books became their first shared treasure. Hidden between worn copies of the Chronicles of Narnia and Bridge to Terabithia, they discovered their common love for stories where friendship conquered all. They spent that entire summer sprawled on the Gibsons' back porch, reading aloud to each other while Evelyn's younger sister Luna watched from the kitchen window, her small hands pressed against the glass. Luna was 8 then, her hair in neat braids that matched her sister's, but her eyes held something different, a quiet intensity that seemed too mature for her young face. She would bring them lemonade, lingering longer than necessary, especially when Patrick would thank her with that gentle smile of his. Even then, something in her gaze spoke of longing, though none of them were old enough to understand its significance. As summer melted into fall, Patrick and Evelyn's friendship blossomed like the chrysanthemums in Mrs. Gibson's garden. They shared classes at Maple Grove Elementary, where their partnership challenged the unspoken segregation of the lunch tables. Patrick's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches would trade places with Evelyn's mother's famous sweet potato pie, while Luna would watch from her third-grade classroom window during recess. Their friendship weathered the first storms of prejudice with the resilience of young hearts who hadn't yet learned to hate. When Tommy Parker called Evelyn a name that made her eyes water, Patrick stood up, his voice shaking but determined, declaring that anyone who hurt his best friend would answer to him. It was the first time anyone had seen the quiet boy raise his voice, and it cemented something profound in Evelyn's heart. Luna observed all of this with growing fascination. She collected moments like precious stones, the way Patrick's hand would automatically reach for Evelyn's when they crossed the street, how he remembered that her sister was allergic to strawberries, the special knock he used on their front door, 3 quick taps followed by 2 slow ones. But most of all, she noticed how he looked at her sister when he thought no one was watching, with a mixture of awe and affection that made her young heart ache for reasons she couldn't yet name. As they entered their teen years, their bond deepened like roots seeking water. Patrick and Evelyn shared every secret, every dream, every fear. They helped each other through the awkwardness of adolescence, braces, acne, growth spurts that made them stumble over suddenly too long legs. Through it all, Luna remained in their orbit, growing more beautiful and more quiet with each passing year, her watchful eyes taking in every detail of their evolving relationship. Their favorite spot became the old oak tree in the Gibsons' backyard. where Patrick helped Evelyn build a treehouse during the summer before 8th grade. Luna would bring them sandwiches and watch as they hammered and planned, her heart swelling whenever Patrick would praise her perfectly cut triangular sandwiches. "You'll be a great chef someday, Luna," he'd say, and those words would echo in her mind long after sunset. No one noticed how Luna's smile would fade when Patrick and Evelyn disappeared into their treehouse, their laughter floating down like autumn leaves. No one saw how she'd trace Patrick's name in her diary, or how she'd practice her signature with his last name. When alone in her room, the seeds of what would become a devastating betrayal were planted in those quiet moments, watered by years of watching, waiting, and wanting. Mrs. Gibson often said that Evelyn and Patrick's friendship was written in the stars, but even the brightest constellations can be obscured by storm clouds. As middle school gave way to high school, their friendship began to shift into something more, though neither rushed to put a name to the changing feelings. They shared their first dance at the freshman formal, swaying to At Last, while Luna, now in 7th grade, watched from the gymnasium doorway, her heart keeping time with a different rhythm altogether. The story of Evelyn Gibson and Patrick Lee began like many great love stories, with pure hearts and innocent intentions. But unlike fairy tales, real love stories must weather storms that aren't always visible on the horizon. And sometimes, the greatest threats come not from outside forces, but from those closest to our hearts, standing in the shadows, waiting for their moment to step into the light. Love blooms in college. The transition from high school to college marked a pivotal moment in Evelyn and Patrick's story. Standing in the driveway of Riverside University, surrounded by cardboard boxes and nervous freshmen, they found themselves at the threshold of a new chapter. The summer heat shimmered off the pavement as Patrick helped Evelyn unload her father's weathered pickup truck, their hands brushing with newfound electricity that neither could ignore anymore. College had a way of transforming childhood friendships into something deeper, like sunlight turning morning dew into rainbow prisms. In their first semester, they found themselves gravitating toward each other even more. The campus coffee shop, the daily grind, became their sanctuary. Every Wednesday afternoon, they'd claim the worn leather couch by the window, their textbooks spread across the vintage coffee table, while steam rose from their matching ceramic mugs. Caramel macchiato for her, plain black coffee for him. It was during one of these study sessions, when autumn leaves danced past the window like nature's confetti, that Patrick finally found the courage to cross the invisible line they'd drawn years ago. Evelyn was explaining the intricacies of her Psychology 101 assignment, her hands animated in the way they always got when she was passionate about something. A strand of her curly hair fell across her face, and without thinking, Patrick reached out to tuck it behind her ear. His touch lingered, and the world seemed to hold its breath. "Ev," he whispered, using the nickname that only he was allowed to use. "I think I'm in love with you. I think I have been since that day you helped me carry my box of books." The words hung in the air like morning mist, delicate and transformative. Evelyn's heart drummed a rhythm that seemed to echo through the coffee shop, though nobody else could hear it. Their first kiss tasted like caramel and possibilities, sweet and rich with years of built-up emotion. Around them, other students continued their conversations, unaware that a love story years in the making had just turned its page to a new chapter. But in their minds, fireworks exploded and symphonies played, celebrating a moment that felt both inevitable and miraculous. Back home, Luna received the news of their relationship with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Now a high school junior, she had grown into a striking young woman, her quiet intensity having evolved into a magnetic presence that turned heads wherever she went. During their video calls, she would watch how Patrick's eyes lit up when Evelyn entered the frame. how her sister's laugh seemed to make his whole world brighter. Luna filed away these observations like precious photographs, each one fueling a fire that burned deeper with every passing day. Their college romance blossomed like a garden in spring. They discovered new layers to their relationship, how Patrick would bring Evelyn her favorite soup from the dining hall when she was studying late in the library, how she knew exactly when to grab his hand during horror movies, which he secretly hated but watched because she loved them. Their friends joked that they were an old married couple trapped in college students' bodies, but neither minded. They had something rare, a love built on years of friendship and trust. Weekend visits home became precious occasions, with family dinners at the Gibson household turning into warm celebrations of their love. Mrs. Gibson would prepare her famous soul food, and Patrick would help set the table, knowing exactly where everything belonged after years of friendship. Luna would watch from the kitchen as she helped with the dishes, noting how Patrick's hand would find the small of Evelyn's back when he thought no one was looking, how her sister would lean into his touch like a flower seeking sunlight. During their junior year, they started talking about forever. Late-night conversations in Patrick's dorm room, where the glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling witnessed their whispered dreams of a shared future. They planned their lives with the optimistic certainty of young love, a house with a wraparound porch, 2 kids, maybe 3, and a golden retriever named Charlie. Evelyn would become a clinical psychologist, and Patrick would pursue his passion for architectural design. Their dreams fit together like puzzle pieces, each one complementing the other perfectly. What they didn't see was how Luna's heart hardened with each happy update from college. During holiday breaks, she would sit at family dinners, watching their love story unfold, while something dark and hungry grew in her chest. She became an expert at hiding her true feelings behind bright smiles and enthusiastic questions about their college life. No one noticed how her hands would tremble when Patrick hugged her hello, or how she saved every casual text he sent her in a special folder on her phone. The world of academia shaped their love in unexpected ways. They learned to balance their relationship with their individual dreams, supporting each other through late-night study sessions and stress-filled exam periods. Patrick would surprise Evelyn with coffee and her favorite muffins during finals week, and she would proofread his design proposals until the early hours of the morning. Their love was practical and magical all at once, built on small gestures and big dreams. During their senior year, as graduation approached like a distant storm on the horizon, their friends started taking bets on when they would get engaged. Everyone could see it was only a matter of time. Their love had become a beacon of hope for others, proof that friendship could evolve into something profound and lasting. But as they stood on the cusp of their happily ever after, fate was preparing to test their love in ways they never could have imagined. Dear readers, if this story has touched your heart and you wish to continue this journey of love, betrayal, and redemption, I warmly invite you to subscribe. Your support means the world to me, and I promise to bring you more chapters filled with raw emotions, complex relationships, and the eternal question of whether true love can survive life's greatest challenges. To subscribe, please click the heart icon below and join our community of passionate readers. Together, we'll explore the depths of human emotions and the power of forgiveness. Each subscription helps bring more stories like this to life, and I would be honored to have you as part of our reading family. With gratitude and anticipation, author's name, P.S. Your comments and thoughts on Evelyn, Patrick, and Luna's journey mean everything to me. Please share your feelings about their story below. I read and cherish every response. A Sister's Shadow. The evening Evelyn announced she was bringing Patrick home for a special family dinner, Luna's heart performed its familiar dance of joy and guilt. Standing in the kitchen of their childhood home, now 22 years old and harboring secrets that weighed heavier than the serving tray in her hands, Luna watched her reflection in the polished silver. High cheekbones, almond eyes that matched her sister's, and lips that practiced smiling until they looked genuine. "He loves pot roast," Evelyn had mentioned during their morning call, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Could you make it, Lou?" "You always make it perfectly." Luna had agreed, of course. She always agreed when it came to Patrick, each small service another thread in the complex web she was weaving. As she prepared his favorite meal, her hands moved with practiced precision, chopping carrots and potatoes while her mind wandered through the labyrinth of her feelings. The house filled with the rich aroma of herbs and meat, a domestic symphony that played counterpoint to Luna's racing thoughts. She remembered the first time she'd noticed Patrick truly looking at her, not as Evelyn's little sister but as her own person. It was during last Christmas break, when she'd worn that blue dress that made her look older, more sophisticated. His eyes had lingered for just a moment too long, and in that moment, Luna had felt something shift in the universe. Their mother bustled around the dining room, arranging flowers and straightening tablecloths, oblivious to the storm brewing in her younger daughter's heart. "Everything smells wonderful, Luna," she called out. "You've really outdone yourself." Luna smiled, the expression practiced and perfect, like everything else about her performance. If only they knew how many nights she'd spent perfecting these recipes, these smiles, these casual touches that seemed accidental but were calculated with the precision of a master chess player. The doorbell chimed at exactly 7, and Luna's heart skipped its familiar beat. She heard Evelyn's delighted squeal, Patrick's warm laughter, the sounds of greeting and homecoming floating through the house like autumn leaves. Luna waited in the kitchen, counting to 10, arranging and rearranging the silverware on the serving tray until her moment arrived. When she stepped into the dining room, she was a vision of practiced grace. The tray balanced perfectly in her hands, her steps measured and smooth. Patrick looked up, and their eyes met across the room. Something flickered in his gaze, recognition perhaps, or something deeper that Luna had been waiting to see. She noticed how his hand, resting on Evelyn's shoulder, tightened slightly before relaxing. "Luna," he said, her name soft on his lips like a secret. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." But she had, of course she had. Every dinner, every smile, every casual conversation over the past months had been building to moments like these, creating opportunities for their eyes to meet, for their hands to brush as she passed him the salt, for whispered thank yous that held more meaning than they should. Dinner proceeded like a carefully choreographed dance. Luna served Patrick's favorite dishes with precision, each movement an opportunity for proximity. She'd learned to make these moments seem natural, learned the art of being present yet invisible until she chose to be seen. Evelyn, caught up in her own happiness, never noticed how her sister's fingers lingered when passing dishes, or how Patrick's responses became slightly delayed when Luna entered his field of vision. After the meal, when Patrick asked about the washroom, Luna seized her moment. "I'll show you," she offered, rising with fluid grace. "The upstairs one is being renovated, but the one by the garden is free." Evelyn, distracted by helping their mother clear the table, smiled gratefully at her sister's helpfulness. The walk to the washroom was short, but Luna had learned to make seconds count. "You look well, Patrick," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough warmth to be noticeable. "College agrees with you." He glanced at her, something uncertain flickering in his eyes. "Thanks, Lou. Dinner was amazing, by the way. You've always been an incredible cook." Luna let her hand brush against his arm, a touch so light it could have been dismissed as accidental. "I remember all your favorites," she replied, her voice low and intimate. "I always have." The moment hung between them like suspended crystal, fragile and dangerous. Patrick swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing with the motion. They exchanged numbers that night, under the pretense of sharing recipes. It was Luna who suggested it, her voice casual and sisterly, but her eyes holding promises that made Patrick's breath catch. "Text me any time," she said, and they both knew it wasn't about cooking. As she lay in bed that night, Luna stared at her phone, watching the cursor blink in an empty message field. She thought about Evelyn's radiant smile, about sisterly love and loyalty, about the way Patrick's eyes had lingered on her throughout dinner. Her fingers hovered over the keys, dancing with temptation. Finally, she typed, "Thank you for coming tonight." It meant a lot to all of us. Simple, innocent words that could mean everything or nothing. When Patrick replied 10 minutes later with, "The pleasure was mine," Luna felt victory surge through her veins like warm wine. This was how it began, not with grand gestures or declarations, but with small moments stolen from the edges of someone else's love story. Luna knew she was crossing lines that sisters should never cross, but desire has a way of redrawing boundaries, of turning wrong into right in the darkness of night. As she drifted off to sleep, Luna thought about the inevitability of it all. How some loves are built slowly over childhood years, while others explode into existence like supernovas, burning bright and destructive. She dreamed of Patrick's eyes, of forbidden touches, of a future that belonged to someone else. In the morning she would feel guilty, but tonight in the sanctuary of her room, she allowed herself to want, to plan, to dream of stealing something that was never meant to be hers. Secrets in the shadows. The weeks following that fateful dinner unfolded like pages from a forbidden romance novel. Luna and Patrick's innocent text exchanges about recipes gradually transformed into late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. Each message was a brick in the wall they were building between themselves and the rest of the world, especially Evelyn, who remained blissfully unaware of the growing connection between her sister and her boyfriend. Their first clandestine meeting happened on a Tuesday afternoon in a small cafe 20 minutes outside of town. "Just catching up," they told themselves, even as their knees touched under the table and their eyes held conversations their lips dared not speak. Patrick told himself he was being kind to his future sister-in-law, while Luna convinced herself that understanding her feelings was the first step to overcoming them. Both knew they were lying to themselves. The guilt ate at Patrick like acid, especially during his video calls with Evelyn. Her trust shone through every smile, every excited plan she shared about their future together. "I'm thinking about a spring wedding," she'd say, her eyes sparkling with dreams, while Patrick's phone buzzed silently with another message from Luna. He'd developed a habit of turning his phone face down during these calls, each vibration a reminder of his growing betrayal. Luna, however, had mastered the art of compartmentalization. She could sit at Sunday family dinners, passing dishes to Evelyn with a loving smile, all while her foot gently brushed against Patrick's under the table. She'd perfected the role of the supportive sister, offering to help with wedding preparations, even as she plotted to destroy them. "You're so lucky to have Luna," Evelyn would tell Patrick, and the irony of those words would hang in the air like smoke. Their secret meetings became more frequent, always carefully planned to avoid suspicion. They chose locations far from familiar eyes. Quiet bookstores, hidden cafes, parks in neighboring towns. Each encounter was justified with elaborate excuses. Luna needed help with her job applications. Patrick was seeking advice about Evelyn's birthday gift. The lies came easier with practice, each deception a small price to pay for these stolen moments. One rainy evening, as they sat in Patrick's car watching droplets race down the windshield, Luna finally voiced what had been growing between them. "We can't keep pretending this is nothing," she whispered. her hand finding his in the darkness. Patrick knew he should pull away, should end this before it destroyed everything, but instead, his fingers intertwined with hers. The rain provided a soundtrack to their betrayal, drowning out the voices of conscience that grew fainter with each passing day. Meanwhile, Evelyn threw herself into wedding preparations with characteristic enthusiasm. She'd chosen Luna as her maid of honor, a decision that now felt like a cosmic joke to the guilty parties. During dress fittings and cake tastings, Luna played her part perfectly, offering opinions and sharing in her sister's joy while exchanging furtive text messages with Patrick behind Evelyn's back. The weight of their deception began to show in subtle ways. Patrick became distant during family gatherings, his laughter a beat too late, his smiles not quite reaching his eyes. Luna developed dark circles under her eyes from nights spent tossing and turning, torn between desire and duty. But to their credit, or perhaps their shame, they became excellent actors, turning every guilty flinch into a casual gesture, every meaningful glance into an innocent interaction. Their mother, always perceptive, noticed changes in both Luna and Patrick, but attributed them to wedding stress. "Marriage preparations constrain everyone," she commented one evening, unknowingly hitting too close to the truth. Luna had merely nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of deceit along with her evening tea. The situation reached a breaking point when Evelyn, bubbling with excitement, announced she had organized a surprise wedding just a week away. The news hit Patrick and Luna like a physical blow. Their carefully maintained facade began to crack under the pressure of impending decisions that could no longer be postponed. That night, in a desperate phone call, Luna and Patrick grappled with their choices. "We can't go through with this," Patrick said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We have to tell her." But Luna, who had come too far to turn back now, whispered words that would seal their fate. "Or we could be brave, just once, and choose happiness." As the wedding day approached, the atmosphere grew thick with unspoken words and hidden glances. Evelyn floated through final preparations like a dream, while Luna and Patrick carried the weight of their imminent betrayal like chains around their necks. The countdown to the wedding became a countdown to an explosion that would shatter 3 lives forever. Every tick of the clock brought them closer to a moment of truth that would redefine love, loyalty, and the price of forbidden desires. In the quiet hours of the night, both Luna and Patrick lay awake in their separate beds, contemplating the storm they were about to unleash, knowing that after tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same again. Don't miss a single moment of this heart-wrenching tale. Click subscribe now to follow the journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. The wedding that wasn't the morning of Evelyn's wedding dawned with deceptive beauty, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold that seemed to mock the darkness about to unfold. The Gibson house buzzed with activity as wedding coordinators fluttered about like anxious butterflies, transforming the backyard into a fairy tale setting that would soon become the stage for a nightmare. In her childhood bedroom, Evelyn sat before her vanity mirror, her wedding dress a cascade of ivory silk and delicate lace. Her hands trembled slightly as she attempted to fasten her mother's pearl necklace. Something borrowed, something old. Luna appeared behind her, their eyes meeting in the mirror's reflection. "Let me help you with that, sis," Luna offered, her steady hands betraying none of the turmoil churning in her heart. As Luna's fingers worked the clasp, Evelyn reached up to squeeze her sister's hand. "I'm so blessed to have you, Lou," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. "You've been my rock through all of this." Luna's reflection smiled back, a masterpiece of deception. If anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed how that smile didn't quite reach her eyes, how her hands lingered a moment too long at her sister's neck. Downstairs, Patrick paced the guest room turned groom's quarters, his black tuxedo feeling more like a straitjacket with each passing minute. His phone buzzed. Another message from Luna. "Are you ready?" Two simple words that carried the weight of an avalanche. His fingers hovered over the screen before typing back, "There's no turning back now." The garden had been transformed into a vision of romance. White chairs lined the makeshift aisle, ivory roses and baby's breath creating an ethereal tunnel toward the flower-draped arch. Family members and friends filed in, filling the seats with excited chatter and expectant smiles. Mrs. Gibson dabbed at her eyes already, while Mr. Gibson stood tall and proud, waiting to walk his eldest daughter down the aisle. As the string quartet began to play, Luna took her place at the altar as maid of honor, her burgundy bridesmaid dress highlighting the flush in her cheeks. She watched Patrick approach from the other side, their eyes meeting for a brief, charged moment before both looked away. The wedding guests saw nothing amiss, just a nervous groom and a supportive sister-in-law-to-be. The bridal march began, and all heads turned to watch Evelyn appear on her father's arm. She was radiant, her dark skin glowing against the ivory dress, her smile bright enough to outshine the sun. Patrick felt his heart constrict at the sight of her, guilt and love warring in his chest. For a moment, seeing her beauty and pure joy, he almost wavered in his resolve. As Evelyn reached the altar, her father placed her hand in Patrick's, the gesture heavy with trust and tradition. The minister began the ceremony, his words about love and devotion falling like stones into the pool of silence. When he reached the part about speaking now, or forever holding one's peace, Luna's hand tightened around her bouquet, her knuckles white with tension. But the moment passed, and the ceremony continued. The minister turned to Patrick, asking him to recite his vows. Instead of reaching for the paper in his pocket, Patrick's hand moved to the microphone stand nearby. The guests stirred in confusion as he gently took it, his movements deliberate and heavy with purpose. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang out, slightly trembling but clear, "I need to call my partner onto the stage." Evelyn's smile widened, assuming this was some romantic gesture he had planned. Luna's heart hammered against her ribs, knowing what was coming. "Luna," Patrick said, the name falling like a bomb into the stunned silence. "Luna, please come forward." The gasp that rippled through the crowd was almost theatrical in its uniformity. Evelyn's smile froze, then cracked, then shattered completely as understanding dawned in her eyes. Mrs. Gibson's hand flew to her mouth, while Mr. Gibson half rose from his seat, his face darkening with rage. Luna stepped forward, her movements fluid despite the chaos erupting around them. She took her place beside Patrick, their hands finding each other with practiced ease. The burgundy of her dress suddenly seemed the color of blood against the white decorations. "I can't marry you, Evelyn," Patrick continued, each word a nail in the coffin of their relationship, "because I've fallen in love with Luna. We've been seeing each other for months. I'm sorry, we're both so sorry, but we can't lie anymore." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of Evelyn's bouquet hitting the ground, white roses scattering like abandoned dreams. She stood there, a vision in white turned to stone, as her sister and the man she loved destroyed her world with 6 words. "We can't pretend any longer, Evelyn." Mrs. Gibson's voice cut through the tension. "You'll regret this, both of you." Her words carried the weight of prophecy, but Luna and Patrick were too lost in their moment of revelation to hear the truth in them. They stood together, hands clasped, as their world exploded around them. Evelyn turned and ran, her wedding dress billowing behind her like a surrender flag. The guests sat frozen, witnessing the collapse of not just a wedding, but of a family. As chaos erupted, people standing, shouting, crying, Luna and Patrick remained at the altar, their victory tasting increasingly like ashes in their mouths. The beautiful wedding setup now resembled a battlefield. Scattered flowers, overturned chairs, abandoned programs fluttering in the breeze like wounded butterflies. In the distance, they could hear Evelyn's heartbreaking sobs, a sound that would haunt their dreams for years to come. The sun continued to shine, indifferent to the destruction below, as a family's trust lay shattered among the roses, and a sister's betrayal wrote itself into the history of their lives in letters of fire and tears. The aftermath of broken trust. The 2 years following the wedding disaster unfurled like a dark tapestry of consequences, each thread weaving a story of regret, resilience, and eventual redemption. The Gibson family home, once a sanctuary of love and warmth, became a mausoleum of broken dreams. The garden where the fateful wedding had taken place withered, as if nature itself recoiled from the betrayal that had occurred there. Evelyn disappeared into herself after the wedding, retreating to her apartment in the city where she spent countless nights staring at old photographs, trying to pinpoint the moment when everything had started to unravel. The white wedding dress hung in her closet like a ghost, a reminder of dreams turned to nightmares. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "They'll regret it, sweetheart. Karma has a way of balancing the scales." Luna and Patrick's happily ever after began to crumble almost immediately. Their passion, built on the foundations of deceit, couldn't withstand the weight of their guilt. They married in a quiet courthouse ceremony a month after the failed wedding, with only a handful of Patrick's friends present. Luna wore a blue dress, unable to bring herself to wear white. The absence of her family, particularly Evelyn, cast a long shadow over what should have been a joyous day. Their early days of marriage were tainted by the whispers that followed them around town. "There go the traitors," people would murmur in grocery stores, "the sister stealer and the cheater." Patrick's architectural firm, unable to weather the scandal, quietly asked for his resignation. Luna's catering business, once thriving on family connections, dried up as former clients chose sides. They found themselves isolated, their love tested by the harsh realities of their choices. Meanwhile, Evelyn threw herself into her work, ascending rapidly through the ranks of her psychology practice. Her pain became her power, allowing her to connect deeply with clients dealing with betrayal and loss. It was during a medical conference that she first met Shane Anderson, the owner of a 5-star hotel chain. He was immediately drawn to her quiet strength and the depth of understanding in her eyes. Their courtship was everything her relationship with Patrick hadn't been: honest, transparent, and built on mutual respect. Shane's wealth never defined him. Instead, it was his kindness and integrity that made Evelyn fall in love again. When he proposed 6 months into their relationship, he did so with an understanding of her past trauma, promising to heal old wounds with new memories. But karma, as Mrs. Gibson had predicted, was indeed watching. 1 month into their marriage, Luna discovered Patrick's infidelity with his new colleague, Sarah. The irony was bitter. The man who had helped her betray her sister was now betraying her. Their arguments echoed through their small apartment, their love story dissolving into accusations and tears. Patrick's excuses sounded hollow. "She understands me," he said of Sarah, the same words he had once used about Luna to Evelyn. Luna found herself standing in her sister's shoes, feeling the sting of betrayal she had once inflicted. The realization brought her to her knees in their bathroom one night, sobbing until her throat was raw. When Evelyn announced her pregnancy, the news spread through the family like healing balm. Mrs. Gibson began planning a baby shower, her first smile in years reaching her eyes. Luna, now working as a waitress at a diner after her catering business failed, read about it in a local newspaper. The photo of Evelyn glowing with maternal joy, Shane's protective arm around her, made Luna's heart ache with regret. The surprise party Shane organized to announce the pregnancy's gender became the stage for the final act of their tragedy. Luna, now gaunt and aged beyond her years, was working at the hotel where the party was being held. She didn't know it was Evelyn's event when she took the shift. As she walked in with the champagne tray, the sisters' eyes met across the room for the first time in 2 years. The tray slipped from Luna's trembling hands, crystal glasses shattering like the pieces of their sisterhood. Shane, recognizing her from photos, seized the moment for his own revenge. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying across the stunned room, "meet my wife's sister, the one who betrayed her own blood for a man who then cheated on her with his secretary. Look at her now." Luna stood among the broken glass, her designer uniform now a waitress's apron, her once proud posture stooped by shame. The wealthy guests whispered and pointed, some recording the moment on their phones. But it was Evelyn's reaction that surprised everyone. Instead of joining in her husband's public shaming, she walked over to her sister and helped her pick up the broken glass. In that moment, as the sisters knelt among the shards of crystal, Luna broke down. Through tears, she told Evelyn everything, how Patrick had left her for Sarah, how their marriage had crumbled under the weight of guilt and karma, how she had lost everything, including her self-respect. But most importantly, she expressed her deep remorse for betraying the one person who had always loved her unconditionally. Evelyn, her pregnancy making her even more empathetic, saw not the woman who had stolen her fiancé, but her little sister who had lost her way. The years of pain and betrayal hung between them like a heavy curtain, but Evelyn's capacity for forgiveness, strengthened by her own happiness with Shane, allowed her to reach across the divide. Luna also revealed that Patrick had been spreading lies about their failed marriage, threatening to ruin what little reputation she had left. Evelyn, drawing on her professional connections and Shane's legal team, helped Luna file a strong case against Patrick for harassment and defamation. The court battle became a media sensation, with headlines screaming, "Sister Act, from betrayal to unity." The case's victory brought the Gibson sisters closer, though their relationship would never return to its former innocence. Luna found a measure of peace, using her experience to counsel other women about the true price of betrayal. She never remarried, choosing instead to focus on rebuilding her self-worth and familial relationships. Patrick's life continued its downward spiral. Sarah eventually left him for another executive, completing the cycle of betrayal. He was last seen leaving town in his old car, his architectural dreams in ruins, haunted by the consequences of his choices. Mrs. Gibson's prophecy had come true. Regret had become his constant companion. Evelyn gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, with Luna present in the delivery room, not as the confident sister she once was, but as a humbled woman seeking redemption. The children became a symbol of new beginnings, their innocent love helping to heal old wounds. 6 months after the twins' birth, Luna died unexpectedly, her body finally succumbing to the stress and depression that had plagued her since her marriage's collapse. In her diary, found after her death, she had written, "Some mistakes cost more than we can ever repay. My sister's forgiveness was a gift I didn't deserve, but it taught me that true love, the kind between sisters, can survive even the deepest betrayal." Evelyn buried her sister in a black dress, symbolizing both mourning and the end of the white lies that had torn them apart. Shane stood by her side, his strength supporting her through this final goodbye. As they lowered Luna's casket, Evelyn whispered, "I forgive you, little sister. Rest in peace." Today, Evelyn's twins are growing up hearing stories about their Aunt Luna, not as the woman who betrayed their mother, but as someone who lost her way and found redemption through remorse and her sister's forgiveness. The Gibson family garden blooms again, tended by Evelyn's children, who plant white roses every spring in memory of both the wedding that wasn't and the sister who was lost. Through it all, Mrs. Gibson's words remain etched in the family's history. Love can heal all wounds, but trust, once broken, leaves scars that remind us to be better people. The story of the Gibson sisters became a testament to the power of forgiveness, the price of betrayal, and the enduring strength of family bonds that can bend but never truly break.